and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building. But there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits.
Chemistry tonight is electric.
As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is Saturday night. Shall we have some fun? It is 9 o'clock on TV, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, government boffins say we must give up meat and dairy to save the planet. Welcome to eco-communism, folks. I'll be giving my reaction in no uncertain terms in just a moment. And plot spoiler, I've had a steak today. In the big story, Sir Keir Starmer has been forced into a promise of talks on reparations for slavery. I'll get reaction from this woman who shocked woke CNN for her surprising response.
2,000 naval men died on the high seas trying to stop slavery. Why? Because the African kings were rounding up their own people. They had them on cages.
And in my take at 10. That's right, meltdown at the BBC as two of its biggest radio stars go to war after one of its presenters said his mental health is affected by working with white people. I'll have details of a brand new scandal at BBC Radio 5 Live, which is rocking the corporation. And for ringside action, tonight's top pundits talk about pedigree this evening, talk about calibre, titan of entertainment journalism, Nina Mishkov, former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace, and fearless political commentator, Fleur Elizabeth. So 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. Mark Dolan tonight is your perfect Saturday night in. So get the kettle on, tear open the custard creams, or maybe pour yourself a cold beer or a glass of wine, and let's get to work. And we'll start with the ever-sober Lewis Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Mark. I can promise you I'm not always sober. Good evening. It's 9 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. There's now been 5 arrests made in London following a day of protests in the capital. The Met say 3 arrests were made at the Uniting the Kingdom demonstration, one of them being a breach of the Public Order Act and a breach of peace, and 2 for racially aggravated public order offences. The other 2 arrests were made at the Stand Up to Racism counter-protest. However, one of them was de-arrested after she agreed to provide her details, having initially refused to do so. And Downing Street says escalation is in no one's interest after Israel conducted precise strikes on military targets in Iran overnight. The strikes against the Iranian regime come after Tehran launched a barrage of more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel 3 weeks ago. Terror group Hamas has condemned Israel's attack on Iran, calling it a violation of Iran's sovereignty and a threat to regional security. But the IDF says they'll do whatever is necessary to defend the state. Meanwhile, the PM, Sir Keir Starmer, says the UK is monitoring the situation very carefully and warned Iran not to respond.
Israel does have the right to defend itself, but we are urging and have been urging all sides to show restraint. Iran should not respond. We will continue to work with allies to de-escalate the situation across the region.
And finally, the PM has denied he was plotting a war against Middle Britain after suggestions that those who made an income from property or shares do not fall within his definition of working people. It comes after the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, insisted that Sir Keir Starmer is a working person and could be among those protected from the government's controversial tax hikes in the upcoming budget. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in an hour's time, and now it's back to Mark.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. The slow march to eco-communism begins. Britain must cut its meat and dairy consumption by half to meet the latest net zero targets, according to the government climate change watchdog, the CCC, who are behaving more like the CCP. The plan to cut our meat consumption by 50% is now sitting on the desk of Ed Miliband, whose zeal for net zero will see us bet the house and our energy supply on flaky renewables. The chairman of this dystopian climate change committee has said that persuading British consumers to change their diets would play a key role in achieving these cuts in emissions. Well, there's your red flag already. The government persuading people to do things has dark echoes of the pandemic, when our faces were covered by those, in my view, scientifically worthless masks. At the time, the government persuaded us to stay home and save lives, even though non-lockdown countries had similar, if not better, outcomes. And whilst the vaccine may have helped the vulnerable, to this day, given that it didn't stop transmission or infection, no one has explained to me why we jabbed the entire healthy population, including children. So forgive me if I'm a little sceptical about being persuaded to do things by government bodies. Once bitten, twice shy and all that. And there is a problem. Just as with COVID, these unprecedented measures, which, mark my words, begin as a suggestion and end as an instruction, just don't make any sense. Why are we giving up a ribeye steak, fish fingers and a glass of milk to reduce our already minuscule 1% of global emissions, whilst China, Brazil, the USA and India burn fossil fuels for fun? China are not doing net zero, so why are we? Another question that you won't get a straight answer to from these eco-ideologues who would happily see us living in caves and munching on crushed beetles. Have you noticed, as with lockdowns, masking and vaccines, once again, we have government measures courtesy of the expert class, who in my view got it completely wrong during COVID, that the consequence is less freedom, less choice and being less healthy. It's blindingly obvious that we are omnivores and that meat, fish and dairy are an important part of our diets. Now, I've got vegans who watch and listen to the show and they love the vegan way of life. But going plant-based makes it far more difficult to get the protein the body needs, and in many cases, doctors recommend that you should supplement with vitamins and minerals just to make up the shortfall, which doesn't sound very healthy to me. Plus, a move to plant-based will see the hideous spectre of monocrop agriculture. How that's good for the environment is anyone's guess, with wheat, soy, rice and other crops sprayed with litres of chemical fertilisers and pesticides, which is in stark contrast to dairy farming, in which the cows eat the grass, then poo on it, which nourishes the soil, and they wee on it, which waters it. This report also ignores the extraordinary value of meat as a foodstuff and material. You get about 1,000 burgers from one good-sized cow. The bones are crushed up for use as a natural soil fertiliser. The blood and any other unwanted connective tissue is used in dog food, cat food and other processed meat. And we even use the skin as leather for our shoes, handbags and the lovely sofa or armchair that you're hopefully sat in tonight watching this show. If we come off meat and go plant-based, it will be a gold rush for the food industry, who will be serving up hideous soya burgers, fake meat sausages and vegan bacon, the first two ingredients of which are water and vegetable oil. Yum. These processed meats will see public health worsen because they're not natural or healthy, and the environmental case doesn't even stack up either, because it will see a further reliance on factory-made pre-packaged food shipped to us via millions of road and air miles. Make it make sense. What about the rather distressing report that suggests children raised on a vegan diet were on average 3 centimetres shorter than those who eat meat? The bones of vegan children were also smaller and less strong, putting them at risk of fractures or osteoporosis in later life. All of this, according to University College London's Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health. Yikes. We've been eating meat for millennia, and if we pursue this plant-based experiment, I predict that the next generation will be sicker, fatter, more tired and frankly malnourished. Most vegans don't get past 3 months before they give up. There are multiple reports of irregular periods, loss of muscle mass, fatigue and even depression from this highly restrictive diet. So in my view, those seeking to enforce a vegan diet are silly sausages. I've got beef with them, and frankly, they can burger off. Making everyone go plant-based is utter bollocks. OK, folks, your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. But first, tonight's top pundits. Titan of entertainment journalism, Nina Mishkov, former executive editor of the News of the World, Neil Wallace, and the fearless political journalist and broadcaster, Fleur Elizabeth. Great to see all three of you. Let me start with you, Neil. Your reaction to this suggestion from government boffins that we should cut our meat consumption by half to save the planet?
Well, you've stolen my line, of course. They can burger off, because...
That would have been a headline if you were still at the News of the World, wouldn't it?
Well, if News of the World still existed.
More pity. That was red meat, wasn't it, the News of the World?
It certainly was.
Red top, red meat.
But you know what? All of this is the classic example of virtue signalling. Because, in fact, the vegan debate has already been and gone. The vegan drive to increase their market share...
Hold fire, because all of this is gold, and we need to turn your microphone on, because I think it's accidentally switched it off. No one is going to get censored on my watch, so let's reconnect Neil Wallace to his actual microphone. But Nina, let's get your views on this. There is a link, isn't there, between farming and emissions and therefore climate change?
Yes, I mean, the problem with cattle is the fact that, well, they fart, basically, and the emissions cause...
As do journalists, by the way. Look at Neil. Why do you think his microphone went off?
Hot air abounds. Hot air abounds on this sofa.
Touché.
24 hours a day. So that is basically one of the problems with the whole thing. But they're not saying cut meat out altogether. They're saying cut it by 50%. And we know, if we think even of our dear departed Michael Mosley, that red meat, a constant diet of red meat, is not good for you. The number of people who die from heart attacks and strokes because of people contributing to their ill health by eating far too much meat, processed meat, which is filled with nitrates, things like bacon, you know, absolutely, if you eat them every day, they shorten your life. It's been proven. So nobody's saying go out and eat grass or, you know, go out and just eat vegetables. But, you know, the basic diet, and we have no idea of cuisine in this country and no idea of nutrition, because otherwise our hospitals wouldn't be full the way they are, and we wouldn't be, you know, obesity wouldn't be costing us billions of pounds a year. We need to have a sensible balanced diet. I've hardly touched red meat for decades. And, you know, I don't feel I'm going to fall down in a dead heat because of it. OK, Neil, we've got you hooked up now. I mean, many people think, by the way, that the risk to health of red meat is a complete myth and that saturated fat has been wrongly demonised. And, in fact, it's things like seed oils and processed food which is making us ill. Processed food is dreadful.
Indeed, and perhaps sugar. But anyway, what was your original point?
My main point was this. This is a classic piece of virtue signalling. They've got a new government in. They're trying to stake their place on the land. The whole vegan debate went because people weren't interested. They did try it, and they realised there was no taste in it, and if it doesn't work, they're not going to eat it. But there is a much, much bigger, more important thing in this. The emissions that come out of the UK are minuscule in terms of the rest of the world. You touched on China there. Right, I went across on train China early this year. You go on a train across industrialised China, you see every half hour you'll see another power plant belching fumes out, coal-fired, all cold.
And they're building new ones every week.
Hang on.
Wind farms.
Well, yeah, they might be building wind farms, but they're not shutting down these coal-powered fire stations. Then you come to the... Hang on a sec.
Should they shut them down? Should they shut them down?
Well, they're not going to,
No,
Nina. No, but
they're not going to because they're not doing net zero.
It's just virtue signalling.
Do you think they should shut them down?
It's just virtue signalling.
No.
They're not going to do it.
No, never mind what they do to other... Do you think they should shut them down?
This is like Just Stop Oil, standing in the middle of the road, saying no one can come, no one can move past.
I'm just asking.
Are you evading the question? Should China shut down those coal-fired power stations?
I come from a world that is realistic. They're not going to do it. Now, in a perfect world, of course, we would start from a different place.
Well, I
wouldn't
think
we
Neil,
wouldn't
far be it from me
start
to answer
here.
Neil Scott. I think Neil would say, yes, they should, but they won't. Therefore, why should we?
But the point is, for cows, for instance,
we want to be a world,
the whole
we're a world
issue
leader,
about the number of cows in this country are minuscule. Go to India. Have you ever been to India?
Well,
if you go to India, there's more cows in India than there are people. So the truth of the matter is, we have a minuscule problem that purely politically is being exploited by this government.
America had more livestock 200 years ago than it has now, and the settlers pretty much did a cull of 45 million bison, and so they actually have less livestock than they did 2 centuries ago. Fleur, are you happy to give up meat to save the planet?
No, I'm not. And this is just another ban from the government. It's smoking, it's drinking, it's sugar.
Gambling.
And not only I don't know how on earth they would enforce cutting it by 50%, because I did a few months work in a supermarket, and the amount of meat left that was just getting chucked away was crazy. So clearly people aren't even buying the stock that's already there. So are they going to cut like how much is sold in supermarkets? I think people would still eat the same amount, but it's taking away people's enjoyment. Like, nothing beats a steak. I'm sorry, but also, yeah, health. Like,
Fleur, does this have
women.
echoes of the pandemic? Because in many ways, I was radicalised by the pandemic because so many of these measures were forced upon us. We stayed home to save the NHS. We borrowed £500 billion, paid people who are healthy, weren't going to die from COVID, to stay at home.
We didn't know that at the time.
Well, I think we did, because I think it was very, very clear early in the pandemic that this was a nasty virus, but non-fatal to most. So I just think there are worrying echoes here of COVID measures, and I think you're going to replace...
quite a lot of people.
It's just my view.
It could have been double that.
Look, too many people died from COVID, but look at the reaction. It's destroyed the country, and I would argue that if you compare countries that locked down and those that didn't, there's no difference.
It's pretty much Sweden. Pretty much Sweden. That was
lowest excess deaths in Europe since 2020.
But the point being...
Why aren't there more dead Swedish people?
Sweden had other factors going for them. They are a far healthier society.
All right, well then why did Sweden do better than Norway or Finland?
They are far healthier.
Comparable country.
They are, but also they are far more obedient. They did it. They locked themselves down.
They were given the choice.
They were given the choice.
If only we were.
But would we have obeyed it?
OK, well, listen, I take your point, but so, Fleur, do you think, the sort of government authoritarianism, this overreach, my suggestion in the big opinion, we saw it during COVID, what begins as an idea or a recommendation becomes an instruction, and I think that's going to happen with net zero. What do you think?
Yeah, well, lockdown made me so strong, like so passionate about freedom, which I didn't care as much about before, because you don't want the government dictating how you live your life. I went to the woke University of Bristol, and I lived in catered accommodation in the first year, and they would have meat-free days every week. And sure, sometimes I might choose not to have meat for whatever reason. Maybe if I was a climate activist, that could be the reason. But I don't want it enforced on me. We should have the choice. We should be able to choose how we live our lives and what's best for our health and what we enjoy.
But nobody's
Nobody's banning it, but I think that will happen. I think, Nina, it's the direction of travel, because we saw it during COVID. The authoritarian state will rear its ugly head.
That was a very extreme...
Because it was an emergency. And there will be another emergency in 5 years' time.
Well, there's a climate emergency.
Okay, but there's an emergency in the NHS. There's an emergency in the NHS, and we need to be healthier as a nation, and we need to be healthier.
And on that we can agree. Very briefly, a couple of seconds, Neil.
The problem is that what you're seeing with the COVID inquiry is big figures who were sat in there saying, you must do this, you must do this, that are now saying, actually, it was based on poor science, it didn't really work. I tend to agree with Nina about some of the...
That's why we put you together, you know.
Yeah. There's been too negative a slant taken on COVID and how we reacted. But there is no doubt that it became tremendously authoritarian, and it's been proved, and they have admitted at the COVID inquiry, they got it wrong.
Well, indeed. I mean, look, Boris Johnson's saying the lockdowns didn't do much good and he was behind them. But listen, that debate will run and run. Next up in the big story, Sir Keir Starmer has sensationally been forced into a promise of talks on reparations for slavery. I'll get a reaction from this woman who went viral on US news channel CNN for her surprising response. Take a listen to this.
2,000 naval men died on the high seas trying to stop slavery. Why? Because the African kings were rounding up their own people. They had them on cages.
Well, that remarkable lady, Hillary Fordwich, is next. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses whilst staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by one simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things, but, it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard-to-treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, government boffins want to cut our meat consumption in half to save the planet. I don't think it adds up. Well, a big reaction on the message board. gbnews.com/your say. Charles says, Mark, at least 20% of life expectancy is genetic. Eat what you like. It represents less than 10% of your life expectancy. Richard says, as I'm dubious about the human effect of global warming, I see no reason why China should shut down its power stations unless there is a better alternative. And Charles says in COVID days, there should have been no laws, only advice. This is the British way. Thank you for that. Keep those opinions coming. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big story, and it seems that Sir Keir Starmer has lost his first big battle over reparations for slavery at the Commonwealth Summit in Samoa. A call for discussions was included in the gathering's final communique, despite the best efforts of the PM and UK negotiators. So does this diplomatic setback leave the door open for the payment of reparations by the United Kingdom? Well, Hilary Fordwich, political and business commentator and regular contributor to Fox News, broke the internet a couple of years ago when she gave this answer to CNN's Don Lemon about who should be paying reparations in the first place. Take a listen.
2,000 naval men died on the high seas trying to stop slavery. Why? Because the African kings were rounding up their own people. They had them on cages.
Well, there you go. Now, I'm delighted to say that Hilary Fordwich joins us now. Hilary, you made quite the splash with that answer on CNN. Why do you think it got such a big reaction?
Well, thank you for having me, Mark. I will say that I'm not a historian. I'm not an expert on reparations. I was blindsided. Now, to answer your question, maybe because it actually hit a little bit of a core of the truth that not many people say, and I wasn't prepared for that answer. He asked me to come on to cover the Queen and the Queen's funeral, not that issue. But I think we should look at the horrific issue of slavery, but anybody right this moment who's really concerned about slavery, I certainly hope they would go to Africa now. They would try to stop the ritual killing right now of young baby boys whose bottom teeth come in before their top teeth because they're killed in what's called minji. There's also the Zone Rouge, where they're mining minka out there in Africa. We should go there and stop that, these poor children. And in the Congo right now, NPR in the US did a big story about how they are also digging and they're making all the batteries that are rechargeable come from the slave labor. I could go on, but what I'm saying is there's current slavery. The Uyghurs in China, the same thing. There's sex slavery. So Mark, the issue is slavery is ghastly. Let's stop it today. Let's focus on stopping it today. But also, what about all the people that now in the UK and the US, because of how open the UK has been to them coming, think about Premier League football players. 43% of all footballers in the Premier League are now black. They're only 3.7% of the UK population. The average income in the UK is £34,000. Footballers are making between 3 million and 7 million. Who's going to pay reparations? Should they help make it fairer for those people that didn't benefit, that don't benefit in the UK? So, where does reparations come from and go to? And my point in that interview with Don Lemon was, look, go back to the root cause. I urge all of your viewers to read the book Barracoon. That book was written by a Black lady anthropologist over 100 years ago. It wasn't published for about 100 years. And she interviewed the last Black slave in America from Africa. And Mark, he talks about the day that he was a little boy in his village, and when all the female warriors came in with machetes to kill all the old people and the older parents so they could take all the children, including him, to the prisons, which were called barracoons. What does that mean? Does that mean the reparations should be paid by all the Black African women whose descendants, they're the ones that their ancestors rounded up all the slaves? Where do you start and where do you stop? That was my point. It was horrific. It's happening today. It should be stopped.
And your argument is that the authorities in Africa at the time, the kings and, sort of senior officials and entrepreneurs were rounding up their own people, putting them in cages and leaving them at the beach ready to be collected.
Well, yes, and the women, and that's what Barracoon actually documents from a slave himself, the day that the female warriors came in with the machetes so that they could behead the elderly people that would protect their own children. Yes, and Mark, it's still going on in Africa today. So people that feel strongly about slavery, let's stop it today. Let's focus our energies there. Let's go and stop the Uyghurs who have to pick cotton by hand. Let's focus on the issue today if we want to. So everybody that feels strongly about it, all the Caribbean nations, maybe they should go to Africa and try to stop what's happening there now. And I think it's a lot more of a complex issue, just that then people in England should have to pay reparations, because also don't forget the word Slav comes from Slavic people. Originally, it was Arabians and Africans in Spain that went and actually enslaved the Slavic people. So it's happened throughout history as well.
Most definitely. Why do you think the political left have embraced the idea of reparations so enthusiastically?
Probably because a lot of people would like handouts, but I don't know where you start and stop. Look at Kamala Harris for an example. I believe that her mother, it's either her mother or father, I should get my facts right before I say this, but either her mother or father is descended from slave owners. So a lot of people have a very complicated history. And talking about the sins of our fathers, should a child of rape be held accountable for what the father did? Should somebody who's suffered from their ancestors' crimes, should we be responsible? Those were our ancestors. They did different things hundreds of years ago. And going back to my point about slavery today, will people today who are using their cell phones, where we know children are mining some of that lithium, will we be held accountable for using a cell phone? That's why I don't know where you start and stop. And last but not least, there's a British lady, and she wrote a book called To Miss with Love. Catherine, I think her last name is Bill Bashiri, but she wrote the book To Miss with Love, and she has spoken about reparations. I urge everyone to go onto the internet. She's an expert, and she explains why reparations should not be paid.
Hillary, a couple of seconds. Of course, we could do 2 hours, but briefly, if you can, some vile crimes were committed by the British in the colonial years, with thousands of lives seen as a commodity. The nation was enriched. Should we atone in some way? If it's not money, should it be an apology, or does that open a can of worms politically?
Well, actually, I think, first of all, you're totally right. But I also think we have been over the years, because reparations were paid. We've been supporting a lot of those countries, and we've been sending millions of pounds to those countries over the years. And whether it's the road structure, whether it's the schools or the construction, should that be deducted from the reparations or the support to their countries? Where would they have done that themselves? And let's look at some of the dreadfully poor nations on earth today. Would their systems be better? I mean, look at how well we went in and we built the highway systems and the road structures and the railroads. Do you deduct that from reparations?
Indeed, and I think it's very important to separate any debate about reparations and the accusation of jingoism, xenophobia, or even racism. Here's an amazing video of you with a chap in senior years. I think he's in his 90s playing golf with you, and I think it represents exactly how we should be conducting relations with each other as human beings. Take a look at this. I love it.
Good morning. This is my friend Paul. And we were golfing this morning, like we did yesterday. Paul, how old are you?
In 1 month, I'll be 91.
And who won yesterday?
Hillary.
Who won today?
Paul. I shot a 77 today.
And what do you normally shoot? What have you shot recently?
77, 78, 79, 80. I mess around in the 70s.
And Paul is here to prove it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what religion you are, what race you are. You can be a golfer, you can be great too. You just got to have Paul's attitude and get out here.
Right. I love it.
Bye now.
Just inspirational stuff. Hillary, we need more time. Let's get you back on really soon. And thank you so much for joining us live from the United States. In an answer, yes or no, is Donald Trump going to win in 10 days' time?
I'll say that his lead has been lengthening, and look at the stock market, because the stock market thinks so, because all the stocks that are related to his platform and what he's going to do, they're up. So stock market says so, his lead says so.
And if Hillary Fordwich says so, then it will probably happen. Hillary will catch up soon. Of course, top business and political commentator Hillary Fordwich. Now, next up, as an OnlyFans model boasts of wanting to sleep with 100 men in a day. Is this female liberation or evidence of a society in moral decline? We'll debate that next.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building. But there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Should the UK government pay reparations? Big reaction on the message board. gbnews.com/your say. Grumpy Grandad says, your guest makes a good point. That's Hillary Fordwich live from the United States. Slavery today should be more important. It is happening now, not 200 years ago. And Richard says, if the UK government were to cave in to these ridiculous and self-serving claims for so-called reparations, it would be absolute justification for a military coup to remove traitors from office. There you go. Feelings running very high on that one. Lots more to get through. Now, social media influencer and OnlyFans star Bonnie Blue, who boasted to her army of supporters that she slept with 23 men in a day, is now planning to do it again, but this time with 100 men. Take a listen to this video, which has now been viewed over 5 million times on X, probably mainly by men.
I went viral for letting 23 guys run a train on me with my friend Bonnie. Now, that video is actually out now, so if you want to check that out, you know where to go. But if you want to be a part of the next one, I'm actually doing 100 guys in one day. So head on over to my Twitter to find out how to apply.
Now, I understand that this occasion has happened and that she has, apparently, according to social media, slept with 100 men in a day. Fleur Elizabeth, is this female emancipation?
I guess you could say that, but it doesn't make it good. I think it's very sad, not just for her, but for her family, that they would have to know. You know, you have a baby and you think this is a precious child. I hope she does amazing things in the world, and this is what she's gone.
Maybe become a lawyer or yeah, you know, prime minister or something.
But they not only have to see their precious child do this online to millions of people that see it, but they have to go out and see their friends and their colleagues that may have seen it as well, and that is mortifying. Also, if she's lucky, her future husband, knowing that not only has she slept with hundreds of men, but put it online, and potential child in the future growing up and seeing that mum did this. It's awful.
Is it anyone else's business than hers, though? I mean, irrespective of what the family or friends think. Is this woman not an entrepreneur, mistress of her own destiny? She's in control, she's calling the shots and probably making a fortune?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't make it right. And I think that we don't tend to consider the consequences not just to our own lives, but the people around us and the people associated with it of doing things like this. Because, yeah, it would just be mortifying, and you know, it brings not just her, but her parents' reputation down, because people would say, oh, why, you've raised this child, why has she turned out like this?
I'm less worried about what her parents think, although it must be dreadful to have a daughter or a sister or a mother who behaves like that. I think it's awful. It's if you offer yourself as a piece of meat, that's exactly how people will treat you.
Are the men not the meat? Is she not sort of gaming the system here?
Well, they're not getting anything from this, and if they were getting nothing from it, then you would say, well, yes, but they are. And all this in the light of that case in France at the moment of Giselle Pellicot, a very, very courageous woman, and I know who I have respect for. I have respect for her in losing her anonymity to stand up against her husband and these 50 men accused of raping her while she was drugged. And, you know, you look at these two women and you say, well, which of these two women do you respect?
Well, indeed, but actually, are those two cases comparable, Neil, given the fact that this was consenting? Is it wrong to judge this woman?
Not in the slightest, no. And I think you make a very valid point, actually, when you think about these two cases happening at the same time. I sort of looked at it and I thought, what a dreadfully sad young woman this is, and what a strange place we're at in the world when we end up, that is her career. The fact that I'm a prostitute is my career, and I'm glorifying
sex work is a career for many. What's the difference between her and someone in King's Cross?
Someone in King's Cross may be forced into doing it to feed their child.
Not all of them, though. I mean, there are people that... I mean, I had a sex worker on a couple of weeks ago on the show. Yeah, we went for a coffee afterwards, long story. But bottom line is that, you know, she was very proud of her career, Neil. She sold her body for money.
No, and I think if that's the position...
I'm not sure that's the position. Actually, can I be honest with you? Taking, she did show me photos.
Yes.
Yeah, family show.
Then I can understand that's how you make yourself survive a situation like this. Okay. Because at the end of the day, this is going to, as you quite rightly said, Fleur, that this is now around forever. This is never going to go away. This is on the internet.
Well, I've certainly saved it.
Forever.
Fleur, let me ask you briefly, if you can, how does this happen to a young woman? What's the journey?
Hard to say. I think my suggestion would be that she doesn't have good people around her, because if you do, they will tell you, they'll hold you accountable, and they will judge you. And I think sometimes judging people is right. Sometimes you need some shame.
Would she find this conversation patronising?
I don't particularly care.
Or even sexist?
No,
maybe.
I don't think we're being
sexist. I can't be sexist, can I?
No.
I'm a woman. And I think it's disgraceful. And the difference between it being a sort of sex worker, prostitute in King's Cross is that's not... There's no footage of it for people to find years later, years down the line. And, you know, I think prostitution...
OK, Neil, what would you say if you were her dad?
Well... hopefully I wouldn't have anything to say because she wouldn't be in this place. But what I do know, I worked in tabloid newspapers for 40 years. I met an awful lot of people who'd found themselves in these sorts of situations. Nobody, I don't believe, does this as a light bulb moment thing. This would be a great giggle, wouldn't it? They have problems and they end up in the place this lady is at. There is no sort of clean background to it.
Right.
It isn't just... It isn't just...
A background of abuse, potentially, or damage, at least.
Exactly. Emotional damage that puts you in a place where you think somehow this is how you gain validation.
Briefly, Nina.
I think in this case you can make an exception, because I think she's thought, I can make money, and that's it.
Fleur, last word.
The hundreds of men are just as bad, honestly. I think it's disgusting for them to participate in it.
Fair point. OK, folks.
They're not shown, are they?
No, they are not
shown in that.
No, most definitely. Probably some of them married and God knows what else. Now, next up, folks, my Mark Meets guest is British music sensation John Galea, who tells us of his extraordinary journey from humble beginnings in Great Yarmouth to battling cancer as a teenager and ultimately pop stardom. It's an amazing story, and he's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The number of pubs may reach critically low levels.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing is a decline in the number of pubs in Britain, and it's fallen. This is an absolutely astonishing figure. So it's basically fallen 10% in a decade. So you know, do our maths. It doesn't take very long for that to happen. So if that carries on, we'd have, get this, only 1,000 pubs by 2074. So the big question is, what will become extinct first? The bank branch on your high street, or the pub on your street corner? And this is a kind of perfect storm for landlords and landladies of, you know, the cost of labour. We saw, I mean, remember when the energy prices were at the high, we just realised just how much energy it keeps to keep the lights on in the local boozer. Yeah. As well as, you know, as the cost of the golden nectar itself. So, as they call it in Australia.
Well, talking about that, I was mentioning the other day to, was it my father-in-law? I said, I used to, when I first started going to the pub, I was 15,
Okay.
They,
just that on
half a lemonade, half a shandy.
I was nearly 16, I got half a shandy. No, we used to have Monday Club, where a pint of Foster's was £1.50, and my father-in-law was saying, I went to London the other day, a pint was £8.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And when you've got those kind of prices, why wouldn't you just go down the supermarket and get 16 tinnies for £5?
So you're going all Aussie now. Put the tinnies in the esky before you have the bar.
Good day, mate. Why not?
Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree, actually. I think it's concerning. A lot of people look at the high streets and they're very concerned that it's looking quite glum, to be honest. You know, lots of things are closing. But the reality is it's because people are not buying from the high street. They're not going to the pub, you know. People are just deciding, you know, what they're going to do in their spare time. Are they really going to go to the pub, or are they going to potentially go to, you know, David Lloyd or a Nuffield, you know, join a gym membership? They're just looking at their expenses and just deciding, you know what, we're going to actually cut costs, you know.
GB News, the People's Channel. I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
An almighty crisis at the BBC. You will not want to miss my take at 10. But first, Mark Meets. And tonight, John Galea, a lad from humble origins in Great Yarmouth, who battled cancer as a teenager and went on to become a pop sensation, touring with the boy band McFly and reaching #1 on iTunes in 2020 with his hit single with artist Hannah Long, Hero Within You. Let's take a listen.
Don't you give up when you're feeling down. There's a hero within you.
Gorgeous tune. Well, I'm delighted to say that John Galea is with me in the studio. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Listen, great to have you with us. First of all, you've been writing music since a young age, right? Isn't it early teens?
Yeah, literally 8 years old, 13.
8 years old.
Yeah.
And so it's in the blood.
Well, it's in my blood. My family don't play any musical instruments.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm the only one.
And were you given an instrument, or did you ask for lessons, or how did it start?
So randomly, my dad brought home an electric organ one day he found.
Right.
And I just started plonking away, wanted to learn how to write music and read, and got lessons and just took it from there, did all the classical grades, and yeah, just wanted to hone in on the songwriting, so then moved to commercial pop, really.
That's amazing. And of course, you're really busy composing right through your teens, a great passion of yours. Big setback when you were 15. You get a bad diagnosis. What happened?
Yeah, I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What is that?
So it's just a very rare form of lymphoma cancer. It's very rare for a teenager to have.
Is it like a blood cancer, essentially?
It's in the
Is it in cells?
Lymph nodes.
Lymph nodes.
Yeah, so I had to have 6 months chemotherapy, and but my family and the friends and the community were amazing, to be fair. But yeah, it was a bit of a setback, to be fair. You know,
And a 15-year-old, you know, you're not really sort of set up for that kind of news, are you?
No, not at all. And in the middle of the GCSEs as well. So
Is that right?
Yeah, a lot to take on, but...
did you have symptoms? Were you in pain, or was it just found and then
flu.
treated?
So honestly, I thought it was flu. I had a massive lump in here, and I didn't...
Yeah.
I just thought it was, you know, just a growth of some kind. And, then went to the doctors, and they said, oh, you might have glandular fever. Took 3 weeks to diagnose.
Yeah.
Finally got there and had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is crazy, to be fair.
Did you get through your exams in the end?
Yeah, I did them. There was some coming into hospital as I was doing them.
No.
It was a crazy time. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Thank God you made a full recovery. Did it change you as a person?
Oh, absolutely, totally. It gave me more of a positive outlook, because you only live once. That's literally my saying right now. And it's so true. So it gave me...
Because 15-year-olds think that they're never going to die, don't they?
Absolutely. And so it gave me a completely different look, and it made me want to drive more to my goals. You know, move to London, get gigging, make some music.
And that's what you did when you were 19?
Yep, I moved from Norfolk, Great Yarmouth to London. A scary move, but I managed to do it, and started gigging where I could, did as many sessions as I could. Yeah. The music industry is an interesting place. So
for my viewers that don't know, how cutthroat is the music industry?
Very. It's even today. I mean, you hear the horror stories, allegations come out, and yeah, I had some.
What do you mean? Like, what sort? Are we talking about money, sex, drugs?
Yeah, I mean,
all of the above.
I had a music manager who essentially wanted me to pull my pants down to move forward in the industry, and that's something obviously I turned away. Said no, but I mean, there's loads.
So you managed to avoid abuse, even though it was essentially it could have happened to you.
Absolutely, I was very close, but I'm not the only one. There's plenty of others out there.
And that must have shaken you up. That sort of encounter.
Yeah, absolutely, because people put your faith in you, and then you want them to believe in you, but obviously that's for other reasons.
And you're given the impression that your career would progress if you were to yield to this person's disgusting demands.
Yeah,
it shows real courage that you got through that, and you did.
Yeah, it's about the music.
But the music, focus on that. And so what about going on the road with McFly? Because McFly are absolutely huge. People forget how popular they are.
Oh my God, they're amazing as well.
Millions of fans.
Yeah, totally. And
so you're on the road with these guys, playing really big venues.
Yeah, it was scary, but it's amazing to hear, people sing back your lyrics. It's nothing quite like it. So, yeah, it was an amazing experience doing it. And I love going out on the road when I can, doing different tours and festivals. It's
I mean, you've had a great career because you've had a lot of attention. You got that #1 in 2020, and you've been putting out a lot of music that people are enjoying. But you haven't got at the moment yet that McFly fame. Do you sometimes look at those boys and think, actually, rather you than me, just in terms of the attention and pressure?
Yeah, I know what you mean with the mental health struggles. Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of attention. It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah, it's difficult. What's happened recently in the press with musicians.
Liam Payne tragically lost last week.
Yeah, unfortunately. And, there are people who need that extra mental health, support that isn't there.
Yeah.
Which I think needs looking into.
It's hard to say, isn't it? But do you see someone like Liam being, to a degree, a victim of the industry, or at least of fame?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I think so. I mean, it's when you get thrown into the spotlight that young, you do need a lot of support, in my opinion. And it's a tragedy. It really is.
So when it goes crazy for you, you'll be ready for it, because now you've been around the block a couple of times, right? So what is next for you? Because I know people can find out, right? John Galea, Instagram, TikTok, right?
TikTok.
Galea. Yeah. What is next for you?
Well, we just released an EP this year, did a couple of music videos, and so I think I'm finally ready to release a debut album. So that's ready to go next year with new videos and all ready to roll. It's just a case of progressing. It's hard as an independent artist, it really is, but if you're determined and driven, you can do it.
That tune was just fantastic. #1, as I say, on iTunes, which is a huge thing. Only a handful of people have achieved that. And that was in 2020. Was it during COVID?
It was, yeah.
So there's a kind of pandemic hit. Well, were you stuck at home? You're like, I better do something.
Yeah, it was.
I've watched the whole of Netflix. I've eaten enough banana breads.
It's true. Yeah. It was, that or TikTok, and I was on both, so I was like, OK.
Incredible. I mean, what a feeling. So you got the best out of it. Briefly, what do you make of modern music? I mean, do you like it? Is some of it manufactured, do you think?
No, I love modern music. I love all new artists, all kind of music. Music's ever changing, and that's the beauty of it. But how about you? You like it?
Look, I do. I mean, I've been listening to your stuff today, and I think it's really I like anything that's original.
OK, brilliant.
And also strong vocals, which is a big thing for you.
You play?
No, I don't. I sing in the shower.
OK, what's nearest?
And that's an image that you'll never unsee. John, congratulations on your great career, and onwards and upwards.
Thank you very
brilliant
much.
stuff. Do check out John Galea online, Galea. He's on Instagram, he's on YouTube, he's everywhere. What a talent. OK, folks, listen, it's all kicking off at the BBC. An almighty row has broken out between two of its biggest stars. It is an extraordinary story. I'll be unpicking it. And let me tell you, you're paying for this shambles, folks. That's right. It's handbags at dawn for two big stars at BBC Radio 5 Live. It's a Take at 10 special. I'm not pulling my punches. Don't go anywhere.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building. But there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,000 and £25 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It is 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, meltdown at the BBC as two of its biggest stars go to war. After one of its presenters said his mental health is affected by working with white people, I'll have details of a brand new scandal at BBC Radio 5 Live, which is rocking the corporation. Also tonight, Donald Trump appears on the world-famous Joe Rogan podcast. Does this seal an unlikely election victory for the world's most famous and infamous politician? And as he tours Samoa, should King Charles apologise for Britain's slavery past? I'll be asking our top royal insider. And for ringside action, tonight's top pundits, we've got entertainment journalism titan Nina Mishkov, former editor of the News of the World Neil Wallace, and fearless political commentator Fleur Elizabeth. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages at 10:30 sharp. A packed show, lots to get through. A total meltdown at the BBC. That's my take at 10, straight after the headlines. And someone I never fall out with, Lewis Mackenzie.
I could never fall out with you, Mark. Good evening. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Lewis Mackenzie here in the GB newsroom. Downing Street says escalation is in no one's interest after Israel conducted precise strikes on military targets in Iran overnight. The strikes against the Iranian regime come after Tehran launched a barrage of more than 180 ballistic missiles at Israel 3 weeks ago. Terror group Hamas has condemned Israel's attack on Iran, calling it a violation of Iran's sovereignty and a threat to regional security. But the IDF says they'll do whatever is necessary to defend the state. There's been 5 arrests made in London following a day of protests in the capital. The Met says 3 of them were arrested. 3 of the arrests were made at the Uniting the Kingdom demonstration. One for being in breach of the Public Order Act and a breach of the peace, and 2 were for racially aggravated public order offences. The other 2 arrests were made up at the Stand Up to Racism counter-protest, however, one of them was later de-arrested after she agreed to provide her details, having initially refused to do so. The Prime Minister has denied he was plotting a war against Middle Britain after suggestions that those who make an income from property or shares do not fall within his definition of working people. It comes after the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, insisted that Sir Keir Starmer is a working person and could be among those protected from the government's controversial tax hikes in the upcoming budget. And the mother of a teenager killed in the Nottingham stabbings has branded an episode of the BBC Panorama as shameful. Emma Webber, whose 19-year-old son Barney, seen on the left here, was killed last year. She says the families were not properly consulted about the episode. The The documentary featured an interview with the killer's family and has now been nominated for a range of journalism awards.
He loved his family and we love him and we miss him so much that I don't think there's any words that could ever convey how much that boy is loved and missed. But what we will do is we will get justice. Wes Streeting wrote to the Director General of the BBC with his concerns when he found out a week before that this was airing and that we hadn't been involved. You know, that there's no duty of care to us, despite what they say in their right to reply statement. And I can't believe that that's our BBC that have done that to us. You would think that Panorama would have learned from past mistakes.
Now, the BBC has responded to that interview in this statement, saying, "We have the deepest sympathy for the families, and the Panorama team has been extremely mindful of the sensitivities in handling this programme. This investigation was very much in the public interest, and the documentary has been produced in accordance with the BBC editorial guidelines." Well, those have been your latest GB News headlines. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
As he appears on the world-famous Joe Rogan podcast, has Donald Trump all but won the keys to the White House? Plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But first, my take at 10. There's trouble in paradise, folks. BBC Radio 5 Live, which is basically Radio 4 for people that got a 2-2 at university, has seen two of its biggest stars suffer a bitter falling out in a row which has rocked the network. Now, this popular channel, which boasts 7 million listeners a week, and which, in my view, largely does a good job, though it is the BBC, so it's a low bar. Well, it's seen its presenting lineup on the drive time show between 4 and 7 p.m. thrown into absolute disarray, as hosts Tony Livesey and Claire McDonnell came to blows after he insulted her by email. Now, the Sun newspaper report that Livesey accidentally sent his co-host the email, which was intended for someone else and which was critical of her presenting skills. Now, this is a surprising oversight from Livesey, given that prior to broadcasting, he was the editor of a national newspaper, although it was the Daily Sport, so let's not get carried away. The Sun reports that Claire has, and I quote, refused to work with Livesey ever again. How the other half live, eh? Welcome to the pampered world of BBC presenters bankrolled by the taxpayer. If only you and I had the ability to go on strike and decide who we will and won't work with. Luckily, when I co-present, I get to work with the likes of the sensational Bev Turner. But of course, 5 Live can't afford someone of her calibre. Since this nuclear bomb exploded, the pair have been presenting the drive time show on alternate days, reportedly so that they don't have to be in the same studio at the same time. Give me strength. Now, unfortunately, poor old Tony, a natural broadcaster and an outstanding journalist, seems to have come off worse following the fracas. It seems that notwithstanding the huge following that he's built on drive time over many years, he's going to be shunted to the late-night graveyard slot. An insider has told The Sun, Claire is happy. She was listened to by station bosses and thinks Tony has got exactly what he deserves. Of course, Tony looks to be the fall guy. You would expect nothing else. He's a middle-aged bloke, persona non grata at our national state broadcaster. Why? Well, because Tony doesn't tick any boxes, does he? This is the same BBC radio management who were painfully slow to offer the legendary Ken Bruce a new contract, even though he hosted the #1 radio show in the whole of Europe. In spite of Ken Bruce's eye-wateringly large, record-breaking audience, he was on half of the wages of his hip, younger colleague Zoe Ball and wound up having to find a gig on commercial radio, where he's taken much of his audience with him. As a man in the autumn of his years, Ken didn't tick any boxes either, did he? Now, there are some stellar talents on 5 Live, particularly the station legend Nikki Campbell, who pretty much reinvented the phone-in format single-handedly. But 5 Live is not without previous controversy. Enter stage left Nihal Arthanyika, who caused a huge storm in November of last year when he said that working with white people was affecting his mental health. Speaking at the Journalism Diversity Fund conference, or as I like to call it, the Woke Olympics, he said an overwhelmingly white working environment was impacting his psychological well-being. He said, it's really affecting me that I walk in and all I see is white people. Nihal, I agree with you. I've got a couple of whites on my team and I'm not happy. They're not for me. They eat weird food and they won't integrate. Absolute wrong uns, thanks but no thanks. Now, whilst Mr Arthanyika raised valid concerns about the workplace being diverse, and that's a policy that, joking aside, I do support, can you imagine the uproar if a broadcaster that was not of colour made these remarks about ethnic colleagues? Well, it would be career over, and rightly so. But not at the BBC, where prejudice rules, as long as it's in the name of diversity. Now, unfortunately, the cracks between Tony and Claire appeared long before Tony's email fail. The Sun have unearthed a clip in which Claire is pretty rude to Tony on air, and he doesn't see the funny side. Take a listen.
They are uber professional. It's a privilege to sit alongside them.
Good to work alongside professionals for a change.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Right, everyone's having a go now. What's happening? Right.
Oh, that was an open goal.
I'm going to say the time dramatically and hope everyone's forgotten what's just been said. It's 5:33.
Yikes. In the increasingly woke world of BBC Radio, dusty middle-aged blokes like Tony Livesey will continue to get sidelined. After a row with a younger female colleague, he's the one that's got to walk away, even though he made that slot his own. His loyal audience will find that a big turn-off. Maybe we should give him a job here. Worth adding that I think Claire McDonald is a great broadcaster too. I think they're both good. It's a shame they can't make it work, but in this pampered world of BBC broadcasting, they get to pick and choose, and they can have rows and go on strike. Different rules if you work at our national state-funded broadcaster. Your reaction, please. gbnews.com/your say. Should Tony Livesey keep the drive time gig? I'm going to start a campaign and say, bring back Livesey. He should be doing that show. There you go. Let me know your thoughts. What does this drama tell us about the state-funded BBC? First, tonight's top pundits. We have Titan of entertainment journalism, Nina Mishkov, the former executive editor of the News of the World, the one and only Neil Wallace, and the fearless political commentator, Fleur Elizabeth. Nina, you've seen dramas like this in the world of showbiz over many years. Does this story surprise you?
Not in the least. Not in the least. You know, it's that old cliche of let's put a man and a woman together. You know, it's always an older man, or used to be older man and a younger woman, and they just have to get on with each other and get on with it. And by the way, I've never listened to them because I never got a 2-2. I didn't actually graduate, so there we go.
No, you're too clever for 5 Live. You're probably World Service level, I'd say.
I would say Times Radio is my natural.
Please don't swear in the studio.
Yes. Anyway, so. This is just the way of the world. You know, the pendulum has swung, and it hasn't swung back far enough to the centre. You know, decades ago, men were in charge and women were very much secondary, and they just had to take what crumbs they could get and put up and shut up.
When you entered Fleet Street in the 70s, the 80s, very sexist environment.
A very sexist environment. And I have to say that environment was actually one of the least sexist places, because if you could do it, if you could do the job you were in,
you got respect.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, there are lots of sexist things about it, but let's not quibble about that. But when I was working on Jackie magazine, which was the big teenage magazine of the time, up in Scotland, biggest publishers in Europe, DC Thompson. And I had worked on the magazine for 8 years, and the editor left. Or the editor went up as a big managing editor. And there were kind of two of us, although I never put myself forward or anything like that, there were two of us that were kind of up for the job. And I was called in and they said to me, we're going to make him the editor. We think you should have it, but we're worried that if we give it to you, he will leave because you're a woman. and there's a chance that if we give it to him, you will stay. And that's exactly what happened. And he was a brilliant writer, and he wasn't fit for the actual detail of all of that. And he left after 9 months, and then I was made editor.
Fleur...
But that's the way it was.
It's quite shocking, really, but in the end, Nina did prevail. But what does this story tell us about the culture of the BBC, do you think?
Well, we've already seen quite recently Laura Kuenssberg accidentally send her briefing notes to Boris Johnson and have to cancel the interview because of that.
Cold, wouldn't you?
So I do think that they kind of need to get this under control, and if he's going to be the example where he has made a mistake and maybe said some unkind things and sent it to her, then he is going to have to take the consequences of that. I don't think it's a sexist thing, to be honest. I think he is in the wrong and should face the consequences. What is slightly annoying is that now that they're doing alternate days, there are now 2 more employees to go on with them, and that's just more licence fee payer money.
Yeah,
on their salaries.
Neil, I think this is a bad look for the BBC, with presenters reportedly going on strike. They won't be in the same building at the same time. You know, this isn't, some sort of Hollywood set. This is, a news channel paid for by licence fee payers. Don't you think there should be a bit more professionalism?
What I can tell you is in private industry, there was no way something like this would be allowed to happen, because your job is to do your job and you get on with it. And whatever is going on between them, you tell them to sort it, or they both go. That's the truth of it. And what you don't do is, and I've got to say that I've known Tony Livesey for years.
He did edit the Daily Sport, didn't he? So did you know him from Fleet Street days?
Yeah, I knew him from Fleet Street days. I don't think we ever worked on the same newspaper, but in that world, you do sort of run across each other. And the thing about him was, I remember when he made the decision to leave newspapers, where he was on a bit of a gilded path, because he actually, at that time, made a financial success of the Daily Sport. And he was projected for good things. But he made the conscious decision to go into radio. And in all the time I knew him, he was the most gentle man. He was never an aggressive bloke. He was never, if you listen to him on the radio, he was never the one putting the hard questions. He was excellent at dealing with the viewers, etc. So I suspect what you see is, yet again, BBC do not know how to manage. You've got such a terrible history of management cock-ups at the BBC. And what they don't do, one of the big problems that you don't really see in the private industry media, is they are so caught up with the diversity politics, the woke politics. Are we allowed to see a man winning over against a woman? No, the woman has to win, whether or not she's got the same track record as him. Yeah. I'm not saying at all that she's not a perfectly good presenter, but the truth is, get on and do your job. You're being paid by the licence fee, by the public.
Well, I think we'll come back to this at 10:30. Let me tell you that, a lot of this is reported in The Sun. We can't stand up the fact that Claire said this, Tony said that. These are just allegations at the moment, but it's clear that the two are not on air together at the moment, and I think it's a crying shame if a talent like Livesey gets shunted to the graveyard slot. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But next up, Donald Trump appears on the world-famous Joe Rogan podcast. Does this seal an unlikely election victory for the world's most famous and infamous politician? Plus, as he tours Samoa, should King Charles apologise for Britain's slavery past? I'll be asking the Queen of US royal and political reporting next.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Oedipus is back in the theatre, as Stefan Kyriazis can tell me. Stefan,
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
A good Oedipus or a bad one?
It's a great one. It's divided the critics a little bit. So some would prefer more kind of truth to the original text, perhaps a little bit more sense of the kind of epic Greek tragedy. I mean, this is Sophocles. It's 2,500 years old, and it's still one of the best, literally, no pun, the mother of all tragedies. It's just absolutely staggering. You like that?
I did. Where and with whom?
So this one is on at the Wyndham Theatre until January the 4th. The exciting thing is Mark Strong as Oedipus, Leslie Manville as his wife, Jocasta, and it's been reframed, you'll see from the pictures, as a modern political thriller. So he is waiting for election results, general election results, you will remember. There's a clock ticking down in the background. They're at campaign HQ. They're waiting for it to click down to 0. We increasingly know that when it hits 0, terrible truths are coming. So it's operating on 2 levels. He's obsessed with the truth. He says very famously, I am me. He's so proud of his sense of who he is. And of course, that's all going to be horrendously ripped away. Mark Strong is wonderful. And then when we get to the very end and the horrific final reveal, I forgot. I was so gripped in the political thriller and everything else, I actually swore under my breath in the theatre, Michael, because I just had been so engrossed, and they play very well at other mysteries going on and a family drama, that when my penny dropped, I literally was devastated, and they do it. Even the critics that haven't loved this reframing admit, the two of them, and especially at the end, it's searingly agonising. It's glorious.
2,500 years later,
yeah,
it's still absolutely visceral.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's time for US News in the company of the Queen of US Royal Political and Entertainment Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, 2 worlds collide, the world of entertainment and the world of politics. Donald Trump appears on the Joe Rogan podcast. Can you give us a sense of how big a deal that is culturally?
I mean, just in analytics alone, at the time of this recording, you and I, over 15 million people have watched, almost 16 million people have watched, and this happened 24 hours ago. So this conversation, obviously, there's a lot of interest in it. Joe Rogan is probably considered the #1 podcaster in the world, broke records with his deal with Spotify, and he is considered just kind of a leading voice for young men.
Indeed. How did Trump come across? Because he was exposed, wasn't he? This interview is not scripted. There are no questions in advance. There's no editing. The two of them were together for 3 hours. A politician could easily trip themselves up.
They were together so long that he was ridiculously late for his own rally. I mean, Trump supporters were leaving in huge numbers because they were like, where is this guy? When is he coming? That's how intimate and engaged these two were in conversation. I mean, right off the top, Donald Trump said, I don't know why the media is so obsessed with me. And Joe Rogan very bluntly said, I do, because you say crazy stuff. He didn't say stuff, but he said, because you talk crazy. They talked about the assassination attempt. He showed him his scar. They talked about aliens. I mean, it was really a wild conversation. He says he doesn't believe Kamala Harris. He called her a very low IQ person and claimed there was something wrong with her based on the fact that she compared him to Hitler. So it was a wide-ranging conversation. It was a very astute PR move for Donald Trump, and it was a good get for Joe Rogan.
Most definitely. I mean, will it help Donald Trump get across the line? It seems he has momentum now. 10 days to go. Is he looking like the likely winner?
I'm not going to, you always put me in this position, Mark, and I'm not going to let you. Okay. All of the best pollsters will tell you that you shouldn't make these types of predictions. You know, I think he has seen a lot of positive attention lately. Polling wise, you've seen him coming ahead in a lot of crucial states. So, you know, I don't know. It's, you know, one of the world's greatest mysteries. Who shot JR and is Donald Trump going to be the next president?
Well, I've just had to, yeah, those are the two big ones. I've got to say, I've just checked online to remind myself that Donald Trump is 78. Just watching him on this Joe Rogan podcast, almost 3 hours without a break. He's got the energy of a 58-year-old, not a 78-year-old. And I thought he looked pretty well, too. I mean, this is a guy that's not showing his age, is he?
Well, look, you know what? I'm going to attribute it to the McDonald's because I, too, love McDonald's. So perhaps it's his diet, and he loves his soda. So maybe it's his diet. Yeah, he does come across as fit, and he does come across as having a lot more energy than Joe Biden does. But I would argue that I wish he'd be a little bit more specific. Joe Rogan said, you know, how did you lose? You know, how was the election stolen from you in 2020? I want specifics. And Donald kind of danced around it. He did inevitably say, you know, the media and, you know, intelligence officers, 51 of them colluded in lying about Hunter Biden's laptop. And that's a legitimate answer. I wish he would have gone there first. But he, you know, when he talked about the 2020 election being rigged, he kind of danced around it. He needs to be very specific. I wish he'd be very specific. And he did say the media lied. They said that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian collusion. And that's a fair point.
Yeah,
but he should have gone straight there.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. He hasn't quite got the discipline or coherence of his running mate, J.D. Vance. But then Vance is not a one-man maverick and phenomenon like Donald Trump. Look, briefly, if you can, do you think that Kamala Harris should go on this podcast too, and will she?
She won't, because she doesn't go anywhere where she's challenged. And I just don't think that that's the right space for her. No, I think Joe Rogan would chew her up and spit her out.
OK. Lefty newspaper, The Washington Post, doesn't endorse Kamala, and woke artists like Stephen King are raging. Tell me more.
I mean, Jeff Bezos reportedly killed Washington Post's Kamala Harris endorsement. You alienate half of the country when you endorse a candidate, and Bezos has a lot riding on American leadership. He became the richest man in the world under a Donald Trump administration.
Owner of Amazon, of course.
Pardon?
Owner of Amazon, of course.
Yes, and the owner of the Washington Post. So I do believe that Jeff Bezos is watching out for himself here. And when it comes to Stephen King, I mean, political endorsements in Hollywood, you got to keep it neutral and inclusive. If you want to have a diverse audience, stay away from politics. It allows you to maintain focus on your core values, avoid backlash, and the political climate shifts and endorsement choices may be scrutinized later on. Avoiding them reduces the risk of negative associations and, you know, misinterpretations.
Well, indeed. Sadly, I didn't get that memo. Listen, Kinsey, before you go, Charles in Samoa, is he doing well, and should he apologise for slavery?
I do think he's doing well. I think he has a very soft heart. It is absolutely not fair to hold current generations responsible for the actions of their ancestors. I mean, legally in the States, we would also argue that there is a lack of liability there. Citizens today cannot be held responsible for something that happened over which they had no control over. And I rarely agree with Keir Starmer, but even he says we should be forward thinking and focus on today's challenges.
Most definitely. What a succinct answer. Listen, Kinsey, always the highlight of our Saturday evenings. The queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, the one and only Kinsey Schofield. Next up, tomorrow's papers with full pundit reaction. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building. But there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. It's 10:30, so producer Melissa runs a tight ship. Let's have the papers. As does director Faye. Now we've got the Sunday Express. The King bounces back. Charles lines up full work schedule for next year. Trip down under was the perfect tonic, says Aid. A tour de force that strengthens the monarchy. Daily Star Sunday, saving tackle. Footy Chiefs ban West Ham hero from having the snip. Great ball control by England's Jarrod Bowen. Footy Chiefs have barred England star Jarrod Bowen from having a vasectomy until he hangs up his boots, despite fiancée Danny Dyer begging the West Ham striker to go under the knife. Well, look, we don't normally get stories from the Daily Star Sunday's front pages, but I think that's an interesting moral dilemma, that one. So let's talk about men having early vasectomies. The Independent, West warns Iran not to hit back as Israel fires revenge strikes. Western leaders have warned Iran against hitting back against Israel after the first open strikes by the Israeli military against Tehran. The UK, US, Germany and France were among the nations to urge restraint following the airstrikes, which marked Israel's revenge for a barrage of close to 200 ballistic missiles from Iran earlier this month. Also, Beyoncé urges America to sing a new song as she brings her star power to Kamala Harris rally. Wouldn't it be the old song? Hasn't she been vice president for 3.5 years? The Observer now. Reeves, my budget will match greatest economic moments in Labour's history. Is that like a funny headline? Isn't that the Daily Star? Labour will launch a new era of public and private investment in hospitals, schools, transport and energy, as momentous as any in the party's history in this week's budget, the Chancellor will say tomorrow. In an interview with The Observer before the first budget by a female Chancellor, who cares, Rachel Reeves draws comparisons with Labour's historic reform programmes begun in 1945. Waffle, waffle. We'll come to that. Does it matter that she's the first female Chancellor? Biden hopes Israel strike on Iran ends escalation, and a Beyoncé bounce. Beyoncé supports Kamala Harris. Mail on Sunday. Starmer's double lie over £40 billion tax blitz. Keir Starmer was tonight accused of telling a double lie by insisting the budget would not be a war on Middle Britain, nor break Labour's manifesto promises. And royal exclusive, death slur at William by top aide to David Lammy. Sunday Times, Chris Hoy, how my amazing wife Sarah helps me face cancer, the uninvited guest in our lives. We were catastrophically failed is the other headline. David Amos's daughter reveals the Prevent admin error that left a terrorist free to murder the MP. Netanyahu, US, does not tell us what to do. And Reeves targets bus fares and Whitehall waste. Rachel Reeves is preparing to usher in a new era of prudence with billions of pounds of cuts from Whitehall departments in a budget she hopes will wipe the slate clean of the last government's decision. Well, let's get reaction to all of those big stories with tonight's top pundits. I'm delighted to welcome Nina Mishkov, Neil Wallace and Fleur Elizabeth. Nina, does anyone care that Rachel Reeves is Britain's first female chancellor?
Yes, they do.
I don't care. I couldn't care less.
You're not a woman, are you?
I would have sort of a gender-neutral alien as chancellor, as long as they bring taxes down and grow the economy.
I agree. You need to be the best person.
I get Mr. Blobby to do it.
You need to be the best person for the job, but I think it is a milestone.
Knock spots off her.
Then how could you hail Margaret Thatcher as the first female Prime Minister?
Bingo. Well, that's a title. That's an achievement. 1979.
Then
I was 1 year old when she became leader of the Tories. That's progress.
If you hail that, this is also progress.
It's old news, isn't it?
And how shameful
is it? 60 years ago.
Exactly. How shameful it's taken that many years to get a female chancellor.
Do you care? Could you give two figs?
No,
particularly now that is completely wrong.
Well, wait a minute. Weren't you the first male editor of the News of the World?
No, I wasn't actually.
No, but you were.
I'm a father with a daughter and two granddaughters. I care about women, and I really care about the fact that Margaret Thatcher was the first Prime Minister and smashed the glass ceiling. I care that there's been two other female Prime Ministers from the Tory party. There's never been one. There's never been one from the Labour Party. There has been virtually no black cabinet ministers in the last Blair government. They should be ashamed of themselves.
You should be disowning the third one. You should be disowning Liz Truss. How can you say you're proud of it?
So what? So what? You think that this woman, Rachel Reeves, has done a sensational job for the...
We haven't seen the job she's done.
So you can comment then after you know. So that's the answer.
I can comment on the fact that she's made
Let Nina finish her point.
I'm allowed to comment and say that I applaud her for reaching that position that no other woman has done before in this country.
What do you think?
I think it's extraordinarily patronising, particularly when you realise she was put in there by Keir Starmer, who will do anything to get a friendly headline. She's there, unfortunately, as a token.
Wow.
And look how badly she's doing it.
Truth bombs are plenty.
Judge her after the budget.
As a young woman, I don't care that she's the first female chancellor. I was actually reading one of the debates, I think it was for Black History Month the other day, and the amount of times they say, and I applaud this MP for being the first black female MP for this area, and you for being the first Indian female MP for this area, and then it's this identity politics. You think they're going to run out of time when it's not going to be the first. So now I'm the first Punjabi female MP for this area, and then what's it going to be next? The first one that's like got blonde hair and also is Punjabi. It's just
sexuality. It's terribly important. It's terribly important who you sleep with now.
Yeah, but they're doing the same with Kamala Harris. She's got to be the first black president that's female. Why doesn't Obama
to a certain
represent the
extent,
black
I agree
community?
with you, Fleur. But Fleur, you haven't lived through the fight that women have had over decades.
I completely appreciate
it's old news. It's not a story.
I appreciate that was...
It is not old news.
That was a
It's a big story when you became the editor of a mass market magazine in the 80s. That was an extraordinary achievement. Right?
It was an achievement.
Well, that was 4 decades ago.
I'm proudest of.
But now time to move on now.
There aren't barriers to women.
What you've got between your legs.
That's not
what your background is. I don't care.
Rebecca Brooks was the first female editor of The Sun. It's big news. Do you know who the female editor of The Sun is anymore? No, you don't.
Victoria Newton, yeah.
Yeah, but the point being... Anyway, the...
Be very punchy.
Yeah, one of many...
What barriers have there been for her? In this day and age, what barriers does she have as a woman to being the Chancellor.
Particularly in the Labour Party.
If you go, for instance, she came from the city, there are many barriers.
She ran the campaign slide at the Bank of England.
Except that's another lie, isn't it? She says this great figure, apparently, for womanhood, it claimed to have been an economist at the Treasury. She was nothing of the sort. She was a minor. She was a minor figure in the. There was 3 or 5 people in the entire. She's lied on her CV. Yeah. She's lied to the voters.
Can I say that she's plagiarised as well?
You are.
Oh yes, she's plagiarised as well.
Look, I just say I don't vote Labour. I have no.
You sing their song a lot.
I don't sing their song a lot. I do not.
Now,
I just see
Rachel
the
Reeves
other
is
side.
not here to defend herself, so she would perhaps deny those allegations of plagiarism or indeed misrepresenting her role at the Bank of England. Perhaps she does have an background in economics, but the bottom line is this endless, tedious line about being the first female Chancellor.
Because it's a fact, and it's an important fact.
If I was the first female Chancellor, I'd be like, can you stop talking about my gender and focus on how well I do the job?
But it's true. You have to acknowledge these things.
But she's also she's courted so hard.
There hasn't been one
she's
so
worked
far.
so hard at this feminist line, getting rid of the portrait, all the paintings in number 11 Downing Street.
Only women, by women and of women.
By women or of women.
No, women should get applauded for work. They should be in positions on merit, not because of their sex.
Exactly. But she wasn't appointed because she's a woman. She was appointed.
How do you know?
Well, then she should be applauded for being a good
Chancellor. To be fair to you, Neil, I have no idea. But I cannot imagine that Keir Starmer, who is a ruthless bastard, would have put someone in that job.
Didn't he have women-only shortlists? He had women-only shortlists as well, so...
they did, yeah.
Apologies
a shortlist for the Chancellor?
Apologies. I mean, we've all had a drink, but family show. What, are you talking about me now or Starmer? I tell you what, she's on the truth drugs tonight. But listen, go on, final thoughts on this.
Right, what you see on the front of the Sunday Times is a story about how, as part of the budget, she's going to bring in cuts. She's going to increase bus fares. She's going to cut jobs in the civil service. What you see here, what's going to be so interesting come Wednesday, is how the Labour Party lied and lied and lied again in their manifesto, and they're not even hiding it anymore. And this wondrous person who is the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, had a decree about what it was to be a working man, and it was someone who could basically just pay this week's rent. She gets asked, is Keir Starmer a working man? And she says, yes, of course he is. He earns £400,000 a year in total.
Owns a house and is a former top lawyer, therefore probably has a great pension and perhaps shares. Do you think that the Labour Party have lied to the public about their plans?
We won't know until Wednesday. We absolutely will not know until Wednesday.
Fleur, if they don't raise income tax, PAYE or VAT, then they haven't lied, have they?
Yeah, well, again, sorry?
The company NI is the big problem, isn't it? Because that's what's going to hit the working
Employer
man.
contributions may go up, but if they stick to that promise of VAT, national insurance and income tax staying where it is, then they're home and hosed, aren't they?
I suppose so, but yeah, I think we've got to wait and see, to be honest.
Do you think, I mean, politically, do you think that actually Labour have got some cover now? Because there's so much pessimism, Fleur, about this budget, that actually what happens on Wednesday may not be as bad as we fear.
You know what? I think there's so much other stuff going on outside of the budget that they can't recover from. That it's not, you know, it's obviously going to be big, but the amount of other scandals that's been going on since they were elected. It's
yes, but that's all just flim-flam, isn't it? That's media flim-flam.
What, things like releasing prisoners and stuff?
Releasing prisoners is something they had to do because of the hangover from the Tory government, and the Tories were going to do it themselves.
Okay.
But we're out of government before they could.
They are making headlines, I've got to say, this new Labour government. In tomorrow's Telegraph, rich fleeing capital gains tax can F off, says a top Labour donor. Does Labour have a problem with high achievers? We'll debate that next. Plus, we'll talk about young men in their 30s having vasectomies. Is it too soon? More front pages, folks. And also a couple of other ones. Is Donald Trump, if he wins, going to be good for Britain? And also, let's talk about King Charles in Samoa. Should he apologise for slavery? All of that and much more next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
It seems that the younger generation's interest in literature is waning. Academics argue that educational policies have failed to encourage reading for pleasure, contributing to declining numbers of English literature students and a shift towards young adult books rather than classic novels. According to 2023 figures from the National Literacy Trust, the number of 8 to 18-year-olds who say they enjoy reading has sunk to its lowest level for almost 20 years, with a quarter fewer reading each day over that same time period. To share more with us about this topic, I'm joined now by the journalist Charlotte Lytton. Charlotte, welcome back. Lovely to talk to you again. Tell us your perspective on this issue. What is happening?
Well, speaking to academics, we can't deny, it seems, that there is a big problem here, and it starts right at school. As you read there, young children simply don't enjoy reading for pleasure as they did before. We can't deny that is also a massive part because of smartphones, because kids now are faced with all of these things vying for their attention. They just don't have to sit down and entertain themselves with a long book and nothing else as they did before. As we see from those figures with people going to study humanities at university, the decline is just going all the way because people simply are not interested in reading for pleasure as they were.
Do you get any feeling that education policy or that teachers are taking steps to counter this?
Well, there is a review of the curriculum going ahead right now, but school is a huge part of it. One of the things that has come up in this conversation is whether teachers now are dealing with crowd control, which means they can't simply encourage reading for pleasure because they're simply trying to get a hold of the students they have.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
What about this headline in the Telegraph newspaper? Rich fleeing capital gains tax raid can F off, says top Labour donor. Fleur, Elizabeth, do Labour have a problem with wealth creators?
They definitely seem to. I mean, they want to tax the rich, and the rich are the ones who pay for the running of the country. And the fact that we now have millionaires fleeing the country and moving abroad to go and contribute to their economy is a disgrace.
Well, indeed. Let's take a look at that front page, if you can, Faye and Mel, of the Sunday Telegraph, because there's a story that I think is of a similar theme. It's the front page of the Telegraph, which I think is just in, and the headline is "Businesses Shut Up Shop Ahead of," in inverted commas, budget for growth. Thousands of businesses are closing ahead of this week's budget, which economists fear will amount to one of the biggest corporate tax raids of the modern era. This is not a good headline, Neil, is it?
No, terrible. Fleur makes a comment that is spot on. You know, that something like 30% of the entire tax take in the UK comes from just 38,000 people.
Wow.
They're businessmen. They are businessmen and women who have created businesses, who've grown, who've taken opportunities and aspiration, and as a result, they pump this vast amount of money into our economy.
38,000 people are responsible for about 30% of the UK tax
25-30%.
25, and that's in a population of 67 million people. Right. I mean, I hear this from voices on the left, Nina, that these rich people, they can leave if they want to, we'll be better off without them. How does that make any sense whatsoever?
Firstly, the trickle-down factor is greatly over-exaggerated. Secondly, I read a piece in, I think it was Fortune magazine.
Can't afford to buy that.
I read it online, which has studied the sort of the habits of millionaires and where they shift to for decades. And when it comes down to it, it makes not a blind bit of difference to unemployment or the economy.
Well, what about the tax take? You know, the revenue that they generate for the Treasury.
It balances out.
Job creation, investment.
I agree.
I mean, rich people tend to spend money, don't they?
They tend to spend money, but it's like
they invest.
That's
the thing that
invest.
matters.
You need to have them to invest, but you don't need to be so desperate when they to cling on to their ankles as they disappear.
I mean, how does millionaires?
Sorry, I may have not made myself clear. I don't just mean in personal taxation. I mean, in their entire contribution to the British economy, the total tax take. You know, when you're someone like the guy who's now just bought a big stake in Manchester United, he contributes that vast amount of money both through his personal tax and, of course, what his businesses are generating.
Fair enough, yeah.
So if he decides to take those companies abroad, and he takes their location with him, which is entirely entitled.
He can't take Manchester United abroad, can he?
No, but he can take his shares in them abroad.
Indeed he can. I think it's a real worry. We'll be covering that in my big opinion tomorrow, which Melissa and I have already sketched out. You won't want to miss it, plus my take at 10 and much more. Can we have a quick look at this Daily Star Sunday story, Fleur? We don't normally cover the Star. I love the Star. I think it's a very entertaining paper, but it doesn't always give us a lot of current affairs debate. But this one I think is interesting. Great ball control by England's Jarrod Bowen. This lad is 27. Footy chiefs have barred England star Jarrod Bowen from having a vasectomy until he hangs up his boots, despite fiancée Danny Dyer begging the West Ham striker to go under the knife. Is it wise or ethical, Fleur Elizabeth, for a man of 27 years of age to have a vasectomy?
I think it's a shame, but I just personally really love children, think there should be more of them. But I think this is his personal choice, and, you know, where's the My Body, My Choice brigade when it's a man?
Well, that's a good point.
Very good.
Neil, it just strikes me as a little young to be having the snip.
I had the snip when I was in my early 30s. I have 2 children. There's 10 years between them. My wife had a very difficult time and she didn't want any more children. And so we made the decision for her. She could come off the pill, she could come off contraception if I had the snip. And we were optimistic that nothing would happen to either of our children, but we never doubted it. It was never a bad decision.
But what about, you know, the unforeseen circumstance of a...
You can't go through life like that,
You lose
Mark.
your partner, you remarry, that sort of thing?
Well, you can't go through life like that. You can't go through your life thinking, what if?
But just think of all of the... Just think of all of the future editors of the News of the World that we haven't had after Neil had the snip.
That would be a terrible tragedy, I agree.
Any more Fleet Street legends?
Thank God. No, I was going to say,
Nina.
what I don't understand is why they've asked him not to, or told him not to have...
his bosses.
I mean, do they think it's going to
it.
make him physically less athletic or capable?
Taking time out of the...
Well, how much time, would it take?
Did you lose any of your ball control when you had the snip, Neil?
I never had much.
Did you ever get shown the red card by your missus in the bedroom?
Oh, certainly.
Did she give you
many occasions? I was sent to the sin bin.
Did you get an early bath? OK, listen, guys, this is degenerated, and I would expect more from these professionals.
Shocking.
Listen, a couple of seconds. Will Donald Trump be president in 10 days' time, Nina?
Sadly, probably.
OK, what do you think? Has he got it now? Neil?
Sadly, might do.
OK. Fleur, is it yes or no for you?
He's going to make America great again.
There you go. How do you...
Are you bonkers?
Do you... Some Conservatives don't like Donald Trump. Where do you
The
stand on
alternative is Kamala Harris.
All right,
And that's enough.
so you got Kamala Harris as the lesser of two evils, somebody that I would elect all day long, and I would also give him a vasectomy, and I would do it myself without anaesthetic, is Steve N. Allen, whose physiology I know well anyway, so it wouldn't take long. Steve, you're in the fancy headliners set. What have you got for us?
It's going to be a good one today. I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of that ball story you've been talking to. We have two excellent comedians doing the work today. Cresta Wetton and Lewis Schaefer will be picking apart the newspapers, including Brexit could be costing you more if you want to go to France. Easy fix there, I imagine. Don't go to France, but we'll find out more on that one. Keir Starmer might be thinking about making reparation payments, or probably getting Lord Ali to do it. That seems like a better solution as well. And do you know what a femcell is? We'll be finding out that. It sounds like a battery, doesn't it? It's probably not. There might be batteries involved in that story, but we'll find out by the end of today's show.
There you go. Listen, I can't wait for that. Steve N. Allen and the headliners team at 11 o'clock. Thank you, Steve. Listen, what a treat to spend my evening with you at home and on the radio. Thank you for listening to and or watching Mark Dolan tonight. Thank you to Nina, Neil and Fleur. We're back tomorrow at 9 o'clock for The Big Opinion. The Take at 10. Mark meets Baroness Emma Nicholson in the studio. Lots to get through. Headliners is next.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we look ahead to Sunday, we will have outbreaks of rain in the northwest, brighter elsewhere, but it will be feeling chillier, especially compared to Saturday. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this cold front sinking its way south and eastwards, introducing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. That will linger across parts of northwest England into Wales, but as it sinks its way southwards, actually it will tend to fizzle out. So many places overnight tonight seeing largely clear skies and staying largely dry as well. But it will be feeling colder out there. We may even see some mist and fog, but also some pockets of frost, especially across the north to start Sunday morning. But for many of us, it is a bright start to the day, with the exception of the far north of Scotland, where we hold on to quite a few showers. Brighter further the east you go, and then across Northern Ireland, we've got cloudier conditions coming through into the west, but holding on to the clearest skies towards the far east. Elsewhere, though, many places are seeing plenty of sunshine to start Sunday morning. Maybe some mist and fog patches, but they'll soon clear away to leave much of England and Wales a fine Sunday with plenty of autumnal sunshine. But through the afternoon, it will be turning cloudier and gloomier across Northern Ireland into northwestern Scotland, with outbreaks of rain and a bit more of a breeze picking up too. Otherwise, for many of us, it's a chillier day out there, highs of 13 to 14 degrees, especially towards the south. But as we go through into Monday, it is going to be quite a gloomy, murky picture out there. A lot of low cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. There may be some glimmers of sunshine just developing towards eastern areas. But as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll start to see higher pressure building. But there is a lot of cloud and some fog as well. Bye-bye.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents, with a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. You'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
You know, is the fact that electric blanket sales going up actually a good thing? This means that people are switched on to the problems that the winter might hold, that they might have some defence against.